Hi everyone, I am filming this little mini lecture to give you an idea on how to use visual aids and how to design an effective presentation aid. Now, with that being said, as you are probably wondering, how are you going to use a visual aid in your speech if it's filmed online? Now, ideally in a classroom setting, you would be able to use basically anything as a visual aid, like the whiteboard, a poster, a PowerPoint, a YouTube video, any of those things. However, because we are in an online setting, it makes it a little bit different. So here are some suggestions that I can give you while you are using a visual aid. So my first suggestion would be to use a visual aid that simply can be held in your hand, such as an object, a model, or a prop. So for example, you can hold up a book, or you can hold up a soda bottle, a water bottle, a candle, any object, prop, or model that can be easily held in your hand would be a great idea for a visual aids since you are meant to be standing up while you're giving your speeches. You can also use a picture that you print out or a poster that you make. Um, so those are great examples of visual aids that you can use and you can hold in your hands while you're standing up. Now, for those of you who are wondering, what about if I want to use slides? What about if I want to use a video? Now, let me caution you with using any of those visual aids because again, like I said, when you are delivering your speech, you're meant to be standing and it might make it quite tricky to like split screens on your computer and all of that. So my rule for using a visual aid that is a media or multimedia visual aid would be to put it up on a separate screen. So for example, if you're filming yourself in your computer, you can pull it up on your phone. Or if you are filming yourself on your phone, you can use your computer or laptop or tablet and put your PowerPoint or your video on a separate device. Again, you don't have to use a PowerPoint, you don't have to use a video, but if you want to, and you are up for the challenge, my best way is to put it on a separate device or object. If not, using a simple prop would be a good idea in using visual aids. So now that I gave you a good idea of how to use visual aids in your future speeches, let me give you a brief lecture on how to use and design your visual aids for the future, since in other classes you'll probably have presentations in which you will have to use visual aids. So let me get started with that. So let's talk about visual aids, folks. So one of the things that I want you to keep in mind is that a visual aid is meant to enhance your presentation, is never meant to take away from your presentation. So if you have a visual aid that is too loud, that it has a bunch of things popping up, if it's too crowded, if it has too much, then it's not a visual aid that is going to help people learn from your speech. It's actually going to be quite distracting. So be mindful of that. If you are going to use a visual aid, it has to enhance your presentation somehow. And if it takes away from your presentation, it was not effective. So with that being said, let's get started. So when we talk about a visual aid, what is a visual aid? So when we talk about a visual aid, it is any object, basically any visual, such as an object, picture, model, graph, PowerPoint slides, keynote, any of that, that basically helps the audience grasp the information easy. So the whole point of having a visual aid is that it's supposed to make the audience remember the information of your speech a little bit easier, not make it harder for them. Like I said, if it's not helping your presentation, then it's not an effective visual aid. So there are different types of visual aids, but here are some that I would like to mention. A video is a great visual aid. Remember what I mentioned at the beginning of the video. If you are going to use a video, make sure that you pull it up on a separate device on your phone or on a tablet or on a computer, or you can just simply use an object. You can also use slides. You can use Keynote, PowerPoint, Google Slides. Any of those would be great. You can also use pictures. I would suggest like using a poster or printing out a picture and just putting it up and talking about it. You can also use graphs. So if you find a really cool graph about the topic that you're talking about, that will be a great visual that would add to the presentation. In a classroom setting, you could ideally use the whiteboard as your visual aid. If you are going to use the whiteboard as a visual aid for future presentations in other classes, I would suggest that you put up your visuals before you start your presentation so that they're already up on the board and you can simply point and look at it when you are referring to it. Now, another thing that I want to say is that when you have a visual aid, it's not simply something that you can just put up and forget about throughout your presentation. It could just be there in the background. That's actually quite distracting. If you have a visual aid, you have to plug it into your presentation somehow. You either have to refer to it, like I'm talking at the same time that I'm putting up my slides, I'm referring to it. You can do that, or you can have your picture and put it in the point that it is relevant for. But if your visual aid is just standing in the background, or if it's sharing a screen with you, that's not an effective visual aid. It is distracting and you will lose points instead of gaining points for having that visual aid. Moving on, when you are designing your visual aid, there are a couple things that I want you to think about is using the appropriate font size. The good thing about using slides, such as Google Slides, Keynote, and PowerPoint is that the actual slides already have a format for the font sizes. So usually titles are from 48 to 36 point font, and the subtitles are like from 36 to 22, and so on and so forth. So they already have that built into it so that it is easy to see. Now, if you are doing a poster, or if you're creating a document, or if you're doing a handout, or if you're writing on the board, you have to make sure that you are able to create font size that differentiates from a title, a subheading, and your actual information, or that it is easy for the audience in the back to see. Make sure that you choose color carefully. One of my favorite stories that I have from teaching is that I had a student who worked at McDonald's, and she was doing a presentation about making the perfect Big Mac, or making your homemade Big Mac or something of the sorts. And the background of her presentation was bright red and the font was bright yellow. Now, I could tell you that it felt like you were pouring acid into your eyes at this point, which is not a good thing for a visual aid. So she had two colors that were just too bright, burn your eyes. So make sure that if you have a dark background like I do in my slides, that you have a light font size in color, or if you have a light background, that your font is dark enough so that it contrasts with your background. In addition, I cannot tell you enough that you have to practice with your visual. If you don't practice with your visual, you're not going to use it in the presentation. You're not going to remember when to click and switch the slides, or when to point at it. You must rehearse with your visual from beginning to end of your speech in order for it to work perfectly. And the last thing that I want to mention is that a lot of you are probably thinking, when I deliver my presentation, if my PowerPoint doesn't work, it's the end of the world. I can't deliver my speech without my PowerPoint. And most of us in a public speaking or in communication settings would tell you the show must go on. You don't need your visual aid to deliver your presentation, because your visual aid is not your presentation. Your visual aid is meant to enhance your presentation, not to be your presentation. So for those of you who are thinking about Thanksgiving coming up, think about it like turkey and the sides of your Thanksgiving dinner. The turkey is the speech itself. So you delivering your speech, you are the turkey, you are the main star of the dinner. And your visual aid will be something like the mashed potatoes or the green beans. Yes, we can do without them, but they enhance the flavor of the turkey. Does that make sense? I know I'm making some of you hungry right now, but I just want to make sure that you understand that if your visual aid fails, it's okay. You can still deliver your speech and the show must go on. Your visual aid is not your speech. Now, with that being said, if you have any further questions when using visual aids, do not hesitate to reach out to me. And if you want to know if your visual aid would work for your speech, or if you think that you need some advice on how to use it, send me an email or set up a Zoom meeting with me, and I will be more than happy to help you. I hope you're having a happy week, and we're getting close to the end of the semester, so talk to you soon.